Hello book loving friends, I am here today to do a bit of a different video and one that potentially is a waste of time, but you never know. As you may or may not know, I am trying to write my own novel, and it is a really long and tiring and difficult process that is stressing me out quite a lot, but it's a process that I am also really enjoying and one that I am learning a lot from. So I wanted to make a video about my 5 top tips for writing, and you can take these with a pinch of salt because I'm not a published author, I haven't got an agent, and you know, I'm not one to really stand to giving writing advice when I haven't got any kind of writing experience and any kind of something declaring that I'm a good writer, but these are kind of the tips that I wish somebody told me when I was writing, or before I started writing anyway, and hopefully these might help if you are thinking of starting to write, or if you are writing at the moment, it might help you with what you are doing. So the first tip, number 1, is do not edit as you write. This is something that has ruined 3 of my manuscripts in the past, because I've got kind of like a third of the way into the book and I've thought, okay, I'm going to go back and edit what I've written so far because I want to make this bit perfect, and then I'll carry on writing. And I've gone back and I've started to edit, but then I've got so frustrated with myself because this bit's not right, or this bit's not right, or that bit's not there, or I don't know where this character's going to progress, that I've kind of given up and I've just abandoned these stories or these books because I was stupid enough to edit as I was going along. If I was giving you this bit of advice now, I would say do not edit as you go along. Write a full first draft and then edit. Otherwise you will find that you keep kind of going back and you're like, well, I don't know where this character's going to end up yet, or they haven't done this bit yet, or they haven't done this, and it gets really confusing in your head and you start to get annoyed with yourself because it's not working properly. So whatever you do, make sure you write it and then edit it. And I'm not even taking my own advice at the moment because I've written 50,000 words of my book and I'm now editing it and I haven't even finished it yet. So yes, I'm not even listening to my own advice, but that is definitely something I think you should do. The reason I'm not doing it at the moment is because my plot has kind of changed a bit and my characters are not going to be exactly who I thought they were going to be. So I'm trying to write it and just change it now so that when I get to the point where I can carry on writing, I know in my head that all my characters are the right people, they're in the right place and they're doing the right thing. So hopefully that won't stop me from finishing it, but yes, top tip number 1, don't edit as you go along. Top tip number 2 is make some character maps. Now, when I first started writing, I was like, that's so boring. I don't want to sit there and write out all the things about my characters because I just know who they are in my head. And that doesn't work because, well, it doesn't work for me anyway, because what I found was when I was writing is there were little things about the characters that I couldn't remember, I couldn't think of off the top of my head. So when I was writing, I'd be like, I looked into his blue, brown, green, what colour are his eyes, and I had to like search through the whole manuscript to find out the last time I wrote the colour of his eyes and write them down. So it's really good to have character maps, and I did have some, but I can't remember where I've put them, so this is going to be really awful if I can't find them. See, this is really bad preparation to make a video, isn't it? I can't even find my character maps. Oh, no, that's not them. Okay, let's just ignore the fact that I don't have them mine with me, wherever they've gone. But yes, on my character maps I had a kind of picture of what I thought they'd look like, and then I had like their name, their age, their occupation, their eye colour, their height, maybe if they had facial hair, if they had glasses, what their mannerisms were, what their parents were called, and just little things like that, so that when I was writing something, if I was writing and I was really involved in the writing and all of a sudden I got to a part where I needed to find out what the main character's love interest's mother was called because it had, gone off the top of my head, I could then quickly flick through my character notes and go, right, she's called Barbara, and carry on writing, instead of having to go, oh, what was her name? I can't remember her name, and then scrolling through the manuscript or writing in big bold capitals and highlighting it in the font, in the text, find out what his mum's name is, and like leaving it as that, because that can sometimes jar you and it stops you from like the pace that you're writing and the flow with your writing. It can sometimes stop that and halt that and mean that you can't really continue because you're too busy trying to remember what her name is. So little things like that really help, especially when you're doing physical descriptions as well, because sometimes in the book I've said my character's got, he's 6'5" and he's got blue eyes, and then the next chapter he's 6'3" and he's got green eyes. So just having those things like that mean that when you're writing you can make sure that you're consistent in your character descriptions, and you can make sure that everything you're saying about the character is actually right and what you had planned, rather than just making it up on the spot, which is what I'm really good at doing. So yes, character maps. The third tip that I have is don't delete any of your work. when you are writing, it is really, really, really easy and kind of quite satisfying if you've written something that you don't like, or the wording is really clumsy, or the idea hasn't translated onto the paper as well as you thought it did when it was in your head. Don't just think, oh, that's rubbish, and just delete it. Leave it in there, maybe put it in brackets, maybe highlight it, but just leave it in there, because I can guarantee you, when you come to editing, at the editing stage, when you read through it, you might think, I need something here, or something's missing here. And if you've got a little paragraph that you wrote, even if it's really rubbish and it doesn't make any sense and the idea is a bit rubbish, at least you can then kind of look at it and think, okay, this was what was in my mind at the time when I was writing this. Let's try and turn this into an idea now that's more coherent and will fit into the narrative. Because otherwise, when you're editing and you get to a stage where you might have a gap in the text, or you might have kind of a bit of a break in the conversation of the characters, and you're not really sure what they're going to kind of talk about next, if you've got a little prompt, that's really good, because you're not going to remember now when you're editing it what you were thinking right then when you were writing it. So it's really handy to have these little bits left in, and sometimes even if I just leave words like perhaps an adjective to say how the character's feeling, so I might put angry character, red face, or something like that, even though that's clumsy and you couldn't leave that in a book, at least it means when I come back I can always then try and develop that and talk about why the character's angry, discuss the way they look, talk about why they are feeling angry, what their mannerisms are like, what their character's doing, because that way then I'm padding it out, but I don't have to think of these ideas off the top of my head when I'm editing, they're already in the book. So when you are writing things and you write a paragraph or a sentence or some lines and they don't fit in with the text properly, or they're a bit clumsy, or you just don't really think they work, don't delete them, just highlight them or put them in brackets or do something and just leave them in there, because it's so easy when you're editing to delete them out anyway. So it's not like if you leave them in then you're going to have them in there forever. You know, the editing process is what that bit's for, to get rid of those bits. But always leave things in just in case, because you never know when you might need that, or it might give you a bit of inspiration or a spark when you come to editing and think, okay, I was thinking of that idea, let's try and turn that into a really nice kind of paragraph or sentence or whatever. So yeah, don't delete things, just leave it all in there, and then you can delete it when it comes to the editing stage, because like I always say to myself and other people, it's so much easier to edit things out than it is to put things in. So if I was you, don't delete anything, leave it all in, and then you can always take it out in the end, and it's easier to take it out than it is to put more stuff in. Okay, I think that makes sense. Top tip number 4 is take a break. Now, this is really difficult because sometimes you can be so engrossed in your manuscript and you're so in love with your characters and you're writing really hard and you're loving it, but then you kind of hit a wall, and it kind of then makes you just sit there and think, what do I do now? I don't know where my characters are going to go now. And I think the best thing to do is to take breaks continuously whilst you're writing, and maybe take every 15 minutes take a break, maybe every half an hour, maybe every hour, depending on how you work best. But always take little breaks and just get up, walk around, maybe have a glass of water, maybe listen to a bit of music, but just do something so that your mind is taken off your manuscript for a little while. But before you do that, make sure you write like the next sentence in your manuscript, so when you come back you know what you're going to say. But just take little breaks, because I find that when I sit there and write constantly and my brain is so focused on what I'm writing, I sometimes go off on little tangents in my writing, or I lose focus of what I'm talking about because my mind is kind of swimming with all these ideas. It's sometimes really good to just let your mind just clear of all these ideas and do something else for 5 minutes, then come back, sit down with your manuscript and start writing again, and you will find that, well, I find anyway, that my thoughts are more coherent and they become more accessible and easier to think about as I'm writing, rather than just it being this massive jumble of words and ideas that don't really fit together. And also, when this is a good idea as well, if you are writing and you don't want to take perhaps a proper break, you just want to keep writing, if you've got loads of ideas that keep cropping up in your head and you're worried that you're going to forget them, write them down, and as you write them down they'll kind of leave your head because they're now on a bit of paper, and then your mind will be freer to think of other ideas and keep everything kind of in a nice order. Because otherwise I find when I write my mind is quite all over the place, and I've got an idea for this chapter and I've got an idea for this character, and this is how I want my epilogue to end, this is what I want this person to do and this person to do at this point in the novel, and it gets all so loud and confusing in my mind that sometimes what I'm writing on the page isn't very good, because I'm trying to fight through all of the other thoughts to get what I'm writing down. So yeah, take breaks or write things down like regularly so that you can free your mind and carry on writing well, and writing what you're supposed to be writing rather than thinking of what you're going to be doing in 7 chapters time. I hope that made sense. And number 5, top tip number 5. Now this one sounds really annoying, and it annoyed me when I first started writing, because people always say, oh, let your characters tell the story, let your characters, you know, let them grow, let them tell the story. And I was just thinking, characters can't tell their own story, you're the writer, you're the one who's writing them. Well, my top tip number 5 is let the characters lead the way in your book. And that is kind of a weird thing to say, but when you're writing, you will find that if you are so in love with your characters and you're so in tune with them, that sometimes they will do things and you'll be writing things about them that you didn't even think about. They just kind of spew onto the page and you think, well, why did he start doing that? Where did that come from? But let them do that. Let your characters lead the way, because subconsciously you are allowing the characters in your mind to behave in a way that you would assume they would behave, and then they are leading the way for the narrative. And that can be really good, because some of the best writing comes when you're not really paying too much attention to what you're supposed to be writing and letting the characters just write their own story. And it's quite difficult to understand that if you've never experienced it before, because, you know, you just think, well, how can characters write their own story? You know, they don't do that, you have to write the book. But yeah, definitely try and fall in love with your characters and let them kind of tell their own story rather than you trying to tell their story. And then you find that your writing becomes so much more fluid, and when you read it back, you find that you have so much love for these characters and you can feel the love between them. So yeah, definitely try and let them lead the way. So they are my 5 top tips for writing. I'm not sure whether they're going to be very helpful, but they are the kind of things that help me and things that I would have loved to have known before I started writing. I think the most important one is definitely character maps, and don't edit and don't delete as you go along. And the other ones are kind of just things that I found as I've got more into the writing process, things that I found helpful, like taking breaks and making sure that my characters are leading the story rather than me leading them. So I hope that's been helpful, and if you want to read any of my novel, which you're more than welcome to do, I've left a link down below to my Wattpad where I have the first 4 chapters up there at the moment. So if you want to go and have a read and let me know what you think, then that would be awesome, because I love to get feedback, whether it's negative or positive. It's always good to know what people think about it. So yeah, let me know if you enjoy that, and thank you for watching. I hope it's been helpful, and I'll be back very soon. Thanks guys, see you then, bye!